Hello, everybody. So this is the week 4 recap video, but also we're going to discuss the midterm paper. So the midterm paper is not due until October 2nd, but I want to give you plenty of time to work on it and ask questions and, communicate with me about what you want to write about. So what I'm going to do first is talk a little bit about it and then show you the documents that I've put up on Moodle for. So I've put all of the midterm resources under week 4. So there's a folder under week 4 that talks about the midterm. The midterm essay, again, is due Wednesday, October 2nd. So that is for us week 7. And the end of that week, the Thursday and Friday, are fall break. So that's why your paper's due on Wednesday instead of the end of the week. And the midterm essay is worth 500 points out of the 1,500 for the course. So both the midterm and the final essay are worth 500 points apiece. So each one is a third of the points for the course. And then your reading responses total up to 300 points by the end of the semester, and your discussion forum comments total up to 200 points. Anyway, since the midterm is worth so much, don't wait to get started on the midterm, and don't wait to ask questions. And you can ask me anything you like. You can ask me if your thesis is good. You can ask me about your sources, anything. Just send me an email. So let's take a look at that on Moodle. Okay, so this is week 4. And you can see that I've put the folder here, midterm resources. So there are 3 documents in the midterm resources folder. There is the rubric for the midterm itself, and then there's a grading rubric, and then a list of sources that are banned. So let's go in reverse and let's look at the midterm rubric first. Okay. So again, 500 points possible, due Wednesday, October 2nd by the end of the day. So the midterm is going to cover information from the first 3 textbooks for the class, the first 3 volumes. The final will be the last 3 volumes. The essay should be formatted as an MLA paper and use MLA citations. So you should have learned this in 101 or 102. However, I've provided you some links to help you with your MLA citations, and I'll show you that when I'm done with the rubric. So your paper should be a minimum of 5 full pages, so all the way to the bottom of the 5th page, and no more than 7 full pages. Since you're doing MLA citations, you'll have to have a works cited page, and that does not count towards the minimum page requirement. Your paper should be in Times New Roman 12-point font with 1-inch margins on all sides and a page number that includes your last name and double-spaced. This is an MLA style paper, which I've provided you a link to so you can see what it looks like. You must use a minimum of 4 scholarly sources, not including the textbooks. So that's why I have a banned source list, so you know what not to use. When you do your citations, they need to be in MLA format, 8th edition. So that's the most recent edition. It came out in 2016. So if you still have your Little and Brown handbook from when you took English 101 and 102, that has the appropriate MLA citation style in it. There is an option in Word to put in a reference, but you don't want to use it because it uses an old version of MLA. It uses the 7th edition, and they look really, really different. So it is going to be the best decision you can make is to put the citations in by hand and do them yourself. When you upload your essays to Moodle, they will be scanned by VeriCite to check for plagiarism, just like I do for your reading responses. Okay, so for your paper, you're going to select one reading to write your essay about. And these are readings that I did not have you do just for normal class. So in volume 1, which is the medieval period, you can choose Mort d'Arthur by Thomas Malory. Volume 2's option is by Christopher Marlowe, and it is the tragical history of Dr. Faustus. And then volume 3, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we will have by the time you start working on the paper. I have you read the second part of Gulliver's Travels. So I've assigned the first part of Gulliver's Travels as part of your regular reading. And so if you want to choose Gulliver's Travels for your paper, you would be reading the second part. So, and that's in the Restoration in 18th Century volume. Okay, so I want you to have some creative freedom in what you choose to write about. But I've made some suggestions for you. So you'll be writing a literary research paper. And in doing so, you need to rely on secondary sources, again, 4 at a minimum, to help you support your thesis. So some ideas I had were you could write about the work's meaning, which may include cultural or historical context. You might write about the work's significance, either at the time it was written or today. You may interpret the work based upon biographical information of the author, or you may interpret the work based on what we call literary craft elements. So these are the elements that make up the story. So characters, imagery, symbolism, plot, etc. To have a complete paper, you need an introduction. So the introduction should provide background information, but it should not regurgitate the entire story. So enough background for the reader to understand what you are writing about. And the introduction always ends with a clear thesis statement. Be careful when you are writing your thesis statement that it is not too narrow and that you will have a hard time making the page limit, or too broad where you have so many things in your thesis statement that you can't possibly cover them in 5 to 7 pages. Okay, so that's basically what I just said. Simple theses are best because then when you get into your evidence and supporting your thesis, you can really do so in detail. So I've given you an example here that Thomas More's Utopia uses satire to demonstrate that material wealth does not create a happy society. So what's important in this thesis is that I have to show evidence that there is satire in Utopia that is related to material wealth and a society's happiness. So you want to explore your evidence in detail. And you also want to provide an opposing view. So you need to challenge your evidence to demonstrate that your thesis is superior. So in this Thomas More's Utopia thesis, I might provide evidence from the text where people do seem to be happy that they've received material wealth, but yet I must challenge that and explain why my thesis is better. Your conclusion should not be a restatement of your introduction. A conclusion should have a statement and explanation of how all of your evidence supports the thesis. You need a big picture statement, so some application of your thesis. In the case of the thesis I've given you, you might explain other ways to use satire in other works. And then you make a final appeal to the reader that says that your thesis is the superior one. And then you need an appropriate works cited page. Also, since you're using MLA, you must cite in the text itself. Okay, so that is the rubric for the essay itself. I'm going to show you the banned sources PDF, and the reason why this exists is because students sometimes don't know what sources are appropriate, and also some students run into trouble choosing sources that appear to be good but actually aren't. So this is a list I've come up with. So your sources need to be reputable, scholarly, and verified, either by another outside source or by something like peer review. All of your research should be done through Southeastern's library. If you go to Southeastern's main webpage, you can access the library from there. The library databases or Google Scholar, which is just scholar.google.com. Do not use regular Google. If you try to use regular Google, you're not going to find what you're looking for, and you'll just be spinning your wheels and spending forever trying to look for stuff. So you want Google Scholar. So things that are banned. The first are encyclopedias, both online and print. And this includes Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia. And the reason for that is encyclopedias only provide very vague information that isn't sourced. So that's not the kind of information we want. We want information that has a definite author, and we want detail. There's no point in looking at something that's vague. Dictionaries, I don't need you to tell me the definition of something. If you need to look at a dictionary, and go ahead, but I don't need you to define what the word satire means in your paper. Other things, I'm just going to skip down through this, but you should keep it handy when you're looking for sources. You want to stay away from CQ Research, procon.com, sites that basically provide summaries of literature like SparkNotes and Shmoop and other sites like that. Stay away from blogs and social media. In the department, we've had trouble with people using Russia Today or RT. It appears like a news source, but it is not. It is a Russian propaganda arm. So stay away from that. There are some newswire services that look reputable but aren't. The National Policy Institute is actually a white supremacist front that tries to pass itself off as a public policy group. And stay away from news outlets that either traffic in conspiracies, use online sales to fund themselves, or don't rely on experts. So it is best if you rely on scholarly journals, which you can find with the library databases, scholarly books, which you can get from the library, either in print or as an ebook, And websites only in cases where the information is both necessary and reputable. So just as an example, if you were writing a paper about a particular disease, it would be logical to get statistics from the Centers of Disease Control. Otherwise, websites are best avoided because they tend to be the least reliable. Note that I'm not counting electronic journals that you might get through the library or PDFs of articles. Okay. And last but not least is this is the form that you will get back from me with your grade. So essentially, I've created categories, and I will indicate to you how I felt you did in each category. So for example, if I felt that you did well in meeting the characteristics of what I've told you the essay is, then I would indicate that this is what you got. If you had persistent grammar and spelling problems, then I would indicate that you got this. The point is that you should be able to go through this list and have an idea of what I'm looking for in terms of each category. I'm looking for clarity. I'm looking for you to demonstrate that you had critical reading, so on and so forth. Because the grading in this course is not based on points per category. Now, you will get some amount up to 500 for your score, but I do not break each category down into a particular number of points. The reason for that is it's not a very good way to grade essays. And let's say, for example, let's look at grammar, spelling, and syntax. Let's say that I have allocated 25 points to grammar, spelling, and syntax. Well, if you only, have maybe a handful of errors, missing a point or two is probably appropriate. However, if your paper is so full of grammar and spelling mistakes that it's impossible to read, then only losing 25 points might not be enough. At least losing 25 points wouldn't reflect the fact that you have systemic problems throughout the entire paper. So that's why these aren't broken down into points based on each category, because a paper that's unreadable should not get an A, and it shouldn't get a B either, right? So I'd like you to look through this form and get a feel for what I'm looking for. Mastery of computer technology, the goal is to have no errors at all. But these are common errors that I see. So if you have an extra blank page at the end, that's a strike against you. If your margins are wrong, that's another strike against you. So you should be able to take a look at this and get a feeling for whether or not you are doing well. So with that being said, if you do the minimum, so you only use 4 sources, you make it exactly 5 full pages, you don't put a lot of thought into what you write. If you only do the minimum, you'll get a C because you did average work. If you don't do the minimum, you don't have 5 full pages, you don't have 4 sources, you'll get a D or an F. If you put in the effort and you do above average work or exemplary work, you'll get an A or a B. So keep that in mind. when you are working on your essay. And I wanted you to have this so that you can compare your essay to it. Okay, so let me show you some websites. So in the rubric for the paper, I gave you 2 links, and this is one of them. So this is the Purdue OWL MLA page. So Purdue hosts this, and it's all the information that you need about MLA that you could ever want. Everything from really common citations like books to really unusual citations like interviewing another person. So you can go to this sidebar and look up whatever you need and find out how to appropriately cite it, both in text and at the end on a works cited page. And there is also this sample paper. This is what I want you to use when you are formatting your paper. So I can't scroll. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is exactly the format that I want you to use. So you can download this. It's a PDF file. And these boxes are really helpful in telling you what you want to do. So blue boxes contain directions for writing and citing in MLA style, and the green boxes are explanations. So you can see that you have a header that's got your name, it's got my name and the course and the due date. And then also you've got this page number where you have your last name and the appropriate page number. Your title is centered right above the text. So in MLA style, you don't have a title page. It just starts just like this. When you are composing your title, you want your title to be related to your thesis. So if I'm using that utopia thesis, then my title should say something about what the work is, so it's utopia, and that satire is somehow related to societal happiness. So that when the reader reads, they have some idea of what it is they're going to be reading about. So bad titles are things like midterm essay or just the name of the work, things like that. So you can scroll down and see these different examples and so on. There are sections in this example. You do not need to use sections if you don't want. And really, since you're not writing an extremely long paper, like this paper is 10 pages, there's really no need to break your paper into sections. So you can just continue on and ignore this section stuff. And let's see. My last comment would be about quotes. They have a quote right here. You should only use quotes when it's absolutely necessary. So if you are quoting a piece from the work, then that would be an appropriate time. But otherwise, you should say things in your own words. So if you're using a source and you want to communicate something from that source, say it in your own words, don't quote it. And the reason for that is if you say things in your own words, it demonstrates that you understand what you read. Quoting doesn't demonstrate understanding. It just means you can copy and paste. Okay, so you won't have a page with notes, so you can not worry about that. And here's the works cited page. And it spills onto page 10. Okay, so I suggest downloading this so that you can use it to help you format the paper properly. Okay. All right, so that's all I wanted to say about the midterm paper. So I'm going to stop this video and have it be separate from your recap for this week. Okay. All right. So I will see you in the next video.